have with us Sudipto Sannigrahi. He's from the PGP 2016 batch. He's received the Young Alumni Achievers Award 2025 in the Corporate Leadership category. Sudipto is the Managing Director at Z47, formerly known as Matrix Partners India, one of India's leading venture capital firms with $3 billion assets under management. At Z47, he leads investments across B2B commerce, advanced manufacturing, deep tech sectors including AI, semiconductors, EVs, renewables, and space tech. He joined the fund in 2016 and became the managing director in 2023 and is among the youngest to become the MD across leading PE and VC funds in India. Congratulations, Sudipto, for winning the Young Alumni Achievers Award.
Thank you so much, Swagata, and thank you so much for doing this interview as well.
Yes. How does it feel to receive this recognition from your alma mater?
Well, to be honest, it's truly deeply humbling. I think for anyone to get the recognition, such kind of a recognition from their alma mater, makes you feel proud and reflective. But to get it from an institute like Ahmedabad, because of its nature and how formative it has been, I think it's deeply gratifying and humbling. And I think everything that has happened since leaving the campus, a lot of it is because what happened in campus. Even the job Z47, formerly known as Matrix Partners India, that I am in, I joined the job from campus, right? Okay. So a lot that has happened, I'm truly indebted to the campus and feels really great to be back.
Nice. In your fund, you have focused on sectors like food security, infrastructure, manufacturing, energy resilience, indigenous aerospace and defense. What inspired you to prioritize in these areas?
So it's a little bit the philosophy of the fund and at least why I do what I do. So Z47, the 47 stands for 2047, which is 100 years of India's independence, right? And we truly believe in India's Viksit Bharat, and it's not the political statement, it's more the aspiration of India becoming a truly developed nation by 2047. Okay. And what drives me personally is to back entrepreneurs who can make that change of taking India to a developed nation. So now when I look 2047 backwards and I think about which are the sectors which are critical for national sovereignty, where we need to be the best in the world, and take that lens, actually 5 sectors come to mind. First is agri and food security. The country should be able to produce as much food that the nation needs and hopefully export as well. And that's why we invest in agri-tech. We've made 3 investments, We Grow, Captain Fresh, Farmart. Okay. Second is infrastructure and manufacturing resilience. We should have our roads, our railways, our manufacturing should be world class. And that's why sort of I invest in manufacturing, where we are investors in a company called Off Business, which is India's largest B2B company. And then recently we have done a lot more. Third is compute resiliency, where we should not be dependent on, say, Taiwan for chips or US for intelligence behind the chips, or our data should not reside outside the country. So the data centers should happen here. The electronics should be manufactured here so that we are truly resilient and not dependent on any country in today's geopolitical situation for intelligence. And that's why we do compute, where we have invested in 2 companies, Krutrim, Nesa, and we want to do more. Okay. Fourth is energy resilience. So you don't want to depend on the Middle East for oil. You don't want to depend on any country for gas. So you need to be resilient in energy. How do you do that? You produce a lot of renewable energy and you move from fuel to more battery based systems. So EV and everything around batteries. So that's the 4th piece where I invest. We were the first investors in Ola Electric. Okay. And 5th is defense. And I think sitting in sort of June 2025 with the number of wars that have happened globally in the last 2 years, I don't need to stress the importance of why it is important that you have an indigenous defense sort of capability, and it's across drones, space tech, and then everything, Navy, Army, UAVs, so everything. So a lot of what I invest behind is 2047 backwards, what are the areas critical for nation building? And it's very unique to Z47. If you look at other venture capital funds, you will see traditional sectors of consumer internet, fintech, AI, but not that deeper focus on Make in India sectors. Would we focus a lot on that? And I have been spending the last 9 years covering bunch of these sectors and investing in them.
Can you tell me more about Z47, like 47? Like how did that come about? Why was this focus on India so much?
So, so quick background. When I joined from campus, it was called Matrix Partners India. Matrix started in the US in the 1970s. It's actually one of the oldest VCs in the world, and one of the first in the East Coast. We were early backers of a lot of marquee companies like Apple, SanDisk, Xilinx, Oculus, software companies like Canva, HubSpot, Zendesk. India started in around 2005-6. We've been in India for around 20 odd years. We have been fortunate to back a lot of marquee companies in India. So companies like Ola, Razorpay, Off Business, Ola Electric, Five Star Finance, One Card, Country Delight, Captain Fresh, Krutrim. And during the journey, I think we felt at a certain point of time that at least the India team, the brand name and ethos should reflect the aspirations of India, which is why last year we rebranded from Matrix Partners India to Z47. As I said, 47 is for 2047, 100 years of India's independence, developed India, and Z is Zen, which is hopefully it enables us to be calm in this journey and make the right decisions over the next, whatever, 20, 25 odd years till 2047. So that's the focus. We've been around for the last 20 years. We have more than 3 billion in EUM. We invest in early stages, but the name change is more for the focus on developed nation building, because that's what we really want to do.
Very good. And the B2B revolution in India, especially post 2016, has been transformative. What are the most significant changes that you've witnessed in the Indian B2B supply chain businesses since then?
So when I joined from campus, it was not that I wanted to do B2B.
Yeah.
I had worked at Flipkart and a SaaS startup before B School. I had interned with an investment bank here.
Okay.
I ended up sort of being part of the B2B team and learning, and you join as an analyst associate from campus, right? However, between 16 to 19, what happened in India was truly transformative. What happened? One, Geo came, so data and 5G became readily available. Everybody went online. Then UPI happened, so payments started happening online, so transactions could happen online.
Right.
Then demonetization happened, so it pushed people to do more online transactions. Then there was GST e-way bill, which formalized supply chains and logistics in India. So traditionally B2B in India was a very relationship business. You go, you sit with that person, drink tea, that person gives you order, you give some credit. So it's relationship, dosti mein businesses hota tha. Because of all of this and then COVID, all of a sudden B2B became digital in India.
Okay.
And nowhere in the world were B2B supply chains as fragmented as India. So if you look at China and US, will not find very large B2B marketplaces, but India, fragmented supply chain, lot of inefficiencies, suddenly went online.
Right.
And when that happened, B2B really took off. Just to give an anecdote, back in 16 when I just joined after Ahmedabad, right? When you went to do a field visit in say an Indore or a Durgapur or somewhere, and you go to you were doing a field visit with a company, and they would take you and say, sir देखो यहाँ पे हमारा टेक लगा हुआ है. वहाँ पे कुछ नहीं होता था, कंप्यूटर होता था. तो when we went, somebody कोई बोलता था रामू को बुलाओ, वो दौड़ते हुए आता था, बोलता हाँ सर देखो डेस्कटॉप है, टेक है, हमें टेक आता है, right?
Right.
When I started doing that post COVID, like late 2020, you go to any factory, any shop floor, everybody is on their phone.
Right.
They are taking photos, putting it up on online marketplaces. They are transacting online. They are talking to people on WhatsApp.
Right.
So on the ground, things changed. And we had invested in a company called Off Business, as I mentioned earlier, in back in 15-16. But around early 20, we realized that this is changing.
Okay.
And then we ended up making 8-10 investments, and touchwood, some of them have done really well for us.
Wow. Very interesting. And like you mentioned, Z47 is named with a vision for India in 2047. How does this long-term perspective influence your investment philosophy and the sectors you choose to back?
So first, we are long on India.
Right.
Right. I'll give you 2 more data points, and again, none of this is. It's more what we genuinely feel about India. If you look at India, right, India is probably a 4 trillion economy. Since 75 plus odd years of independence, we have added 4 trillion of GDP.
Right.
India will add the exact same GDP over the next 5 to 8 years.
Oh.
So the country will double in 5 to 8 years. So whatever development we saw in 75 years will happen in the next 5 to 8 years, because India will reach 8 to 10 trillion by 2030. So that's the amount of growth that's going to happen. Second, for the first time, so my undergrad is IIT Kharagpur Electronics. Before COVID, when I used to go to the valley, Most of my friends were very happy with the choice that post KGPC they did their PhD in the US, stayed there. Today, when I go, most people have FOMO and they want to come back to India.
Yeah.
So, in the broad geopolitical situation, India is becoming a safe harbor, and we had sort of brain drain, but now some version of reverse brain drain is starting to happen. Today, we have reasonably good favorable policies for company creation. And if you look at China plus one, war, India is actually a stable English speaking geography that can actually propel the world future. So, this kind of growth happens once in a generation of a nation. China went through that from 2005 to 16, US went through that in the 70s to 90s. We have this huge opportunity in front of us for the next 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
So we are very bullish and long on India. Now with that view, what do we invest in? Obviously, my sectors that we covered, but we also invest in financial services for the country, because if you have to have all of this growth, it's need to be backed by capital and financial services. We are backing companies that are thinking, what does Indian consumer want, and can you give 10x experience to the Indian consumer at significantly lower costs than the West, right? So a lot of it is thinking, what does India look 2047? What will Indian middle class look like? To do that, which industries are critical? How do you finance those industries? How do you work with the government to ensure that the right policies for startup creation is happening? Hopefully, a little bit of reverse brain drain also happens, and talent from the US comes back and builds it for India. But very, very exciting times for the country.
And how closely do you work with policymakers? Because this is about India, it's about a vision the next couple of decades.
So it's reasonably, because see, a lot of these industries can't be built without favorable policy.
Yeah.
For example, if I look at Ola Electric journey, it would have been very difficult to be built without conducive policies for EV, both through PLIs, which is production linked incentives, so that if you do capex in the country, you get incentives from the government, so you can actually set up a two-wheeler factory, a gigafactory, and FAME subsidies, which subsidize the adoption of EVs, right? Similarly, if I look at Ministry of IT, right, there has been significant push on semiconductors, and you are in Ahmedabad and we're creating Dholera right next door, right, for semiconductor manufacturing. There are policies called DLIs, which are design linked incentives, to incentivize startups to actually do chip design. If you look at India AI mission today and the amount of support that the government is giving to essentially build indigenous AI capabilities for India. So a lot of it is sort of policy backwards, because these are capex intensive long-term sectors and can't be built in isolation. And if I look at how China was built, it was also policy driven. And today the way US and MAGA and Make America Great Again, if you look at it, it's also significantly policy driven. So yeah, need to work closely with government and policy, at least in some of these critical sectors.
Right. And how did your time at IIMA shape your approach to investing, leadership, ecosystem building?
Well, first of all, when you enter IIM Ahmedabad, it's a chaos. I think most PGP students will tell you that the first few weeks are crazy in campus, right? And when I look back and reflect, it was not what I wanted to learn from the campus, but what I needed to learn from the campus that the campus taught me. What does IIMA PGP fundamentally teach you? I think it teaches you 2-3 things. The first thing is being calm under pressure, because the first few weeks just puts you under so much pressure and chaos and running around. But being calm under pressure, showing up every day at 8:45 a.m. without fail, because the doors will close, coming to class prepared because you don't know what quiz you will have, right? So just being mentally prepared, I think that's the first thing that campus teaches. Second, what the case study pedagogy teaches us is first principles thinking and ability to think rationally in an ambiguous situation, right? Because you are IIMA throws so many different cases, so that whenever you face a new situation in life, you can think first principles and try to structure the problem. And the world is filled with uncertainty and incomplete data, and your ability to do that is actually a superpower. And third, and which I think is the most important part that I took away from IIM Ahmedabad, is I think most of life is an art of storytelling. You're always telling a story. As a founder, you're telling a story to investors. As investors, we're telling a story to the founders. As salespeople, you are selling something. Ahmedabad forces you to speak out. It forces you to speak out in every class, because there's marks for class participation. It forces you to speak up in group discussions. I think the most formative course for IIM Ahmedabad for the last 50 years has been WAC, which forces you to structure your thought process. So, structured thinking, articulation, and confidence to speak out. I think all of these are very key, which you don't realize on the day to day, because you think, why am I right? I don't know if WAC is still there, but why are you writing so many essays? And even in 2014 we used to question. But the ability to structure is something I think it's truly deeply meaningful. I think the final thing, so I have been lucky enough to study at IIM Ahmedabad and IIT Kharagpur, both sort of the first IITs IIMs set up in the country, right? IIT Kharagpur had this big logo dedicated to the service of the nation. So the main building has this big logo. If at Ahmedabad, if you just walk through old campus, look at the red bricks. If you look at the tunnel between old campus and new campus, and look at Vikram Sarabhai and everybody who has built the campus, right? Somewhere that keeps that imprint that you want to live in India, you want to invest in India, you want to build in India, and a little bit of that nation building in the sectors that you choose, right? If you have been fortunate enough to study in places like IIM Ahmedabad, I think there's some inspiration in the campus that pushes you to do that.
Wow. And what is your advice to students who want to work in your path?
Take risks. I think, as I articulated, I think the next 10 to 15 years will be the best years for India, and probably could be the best years for any 25-year-old boy or girl anywhere in the world. So take risks in life. I'd entered with an investment bank back in the day, and likely that would have been the highest paying job on campus, and I said no to the PPO because I was very clear I don't want to do investment banking, I want to go back to technology. I took a job with a early stage startup, I won't name it, at less than 50% of the salary, and then sort of Matrix Partners came, it happened, but it was probabilistically very low that I will end up at Matrix because they hire 1 or 2 people across all IIMs, right? I was very clear that the world was moving towards tech.
Okay.
And I did not want to do investment banking and consulting out of campus, right? The world is changing at a very rapid pace, and I would really encourage students graduating that take risks in your life. If not, the other way of articulating is the only way you become rich in life is if you own equity, and the only way you own equity is if you're an entrepreneur and investor. Right. But just take risks, be close to tech, be close to where the country is going, and do stuff that is more relevant today. Don't look at what people have done for the last 15 years. Think what you should be doing for the next 15 years, which is relevant for the country and hopefully relevant for you, which hopefully give you enough gratitude in the journey and also help you make money.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sudipto, for sharing your thoughts, and congratulations once again.
Thank you so much for doing this, and as I mentioned in the beginning, truly humbled to be back here and very happy to be back in campus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.